Good evening. It is August the 24th, 2016, and you are live with the EdTech Situation Room, broadcasting worldwide for an audience of only a few live viewers, but probably thousands of asynchronous viewers that will tune in later. I am Wes Fryer, your host tonight, and I am the Director of Technology at Cassidy School, where it is the silly season of the start of school with lots of tech requests. But I'm excited to be joined tonight, as always, by Jason Neiffer, my co-host. And Jason, I'm sure things in Montana are just extremely calm this time of year for all IT support people.
They are. We haven't quite got the support tickets that we expect here in a week or so from at least students that we serve, but teachers have been letting us know that they're back and starting to work their way into their digital classrooms. And I'm sure the next 2 weeks will present us with extraordinary opportunities to multitask and otherwise, be an evolved computer user. So I'm joining you tonight from fabulous Missoula, Montana, where we are starting to get a little bit of the typical August fire smoke. The air was a little chewy this morning, although not as bad as a year ago, as Facebook reminded me this morning by sharing with me photos of this time last year when it was pea soup smoky outside. But I'm excited to be here tonight. And lots of interesting news to talk about in the educational technology sphere. So want to get started, Wes?
Absolutely. I'll just tell everybody, if you're new to us, you can find all the links that we'll be discussing at edtechsr.com/links. We have been using, and I think it's been working really well, this is our 20th episode, a Google Doc, and we generally don't get through all of the links, but we basically are trying to talk about technology news with an educational lens. So, I'll jump in right away, actually, with something not from the week, but definitely the best article I have read in a long time. And it's called "If You're Not Paranoid, You're Crazy." And it's by Walter Kern. He wrote this in The Atlantic in November of 2015. I think that I was probably directed to this by the amazing and probably best advice that Jason has given yet on the podcast, Note to Self podcast, which is just full of great resources and links. And oh my gosh, the quick story is, our phones are listening to us, and you need to probably, it's a good idea to go to your privacy settings for your smartphone, take a look at the apps that you have allowed access to the microphone. Ask yourself, does Facebook really need access to my microphone? And in the article, Kern talks about, we hope that we're going to have benevolent overlords, and the information that's being collected about us and that we are freely giving away is just going to, here's an ad for, a new lawnmower because I just searched for lawnmower on Google. But there's a lot of weird things that can happen, and I am noticing these things more, and in the course of reading the article over a period of days, because it is a long article, my quick little story, like he talks about a walnut moment, was I had some Cheetos that I bought. We don't usually get a lot of chips, but I had some. I have this app called Pacer, which I am supposed to be religiously documenting my food and my exercise and my water. And literally shortly after I was enjoying some Cheetos, I got this text message that says, "Are you binge eating? Make sure you don't keep tempting foods nearby." And sure enough, not only Pacer, but Facebook and Amazon have access to the microphone. I don't know. It is a great article. It makes me think more about privacy. I am an enthusiast for technology, and I'm an advocate for using it in powerful and transformative ways to bring new opportunities for learning into our classrooms and into our lives. But at the same time, there is an undeniably dark side to the way that we are living in a surveillance age. And part of the educational lens is for all of us to be talking about how much we want to share, what we want to share, and not just blindly sharing, because I think there's a lot of that happening now. So any thoughts, Jason, on the surveillance state and how you are acting in response to your knowledge or your perception of what's going on?
Well, I mean, we've danced around this topic a couple times in the past, and I do think that generally speaking, end users need to be way more cognizant of their devices and what they're sharing. I think that part of the lesson here, actually, for me, the educational context is twofold. First, we should be having these discussions in classrooms, and I don't think that there's definitive advice we can really give. I mean, there's good basic stuff. I don't necessarily agree with the put the sticky note on your webcam crowd. And I know that particular issue was discussed in some depth on the Note to Self podcast. I don't find that to be a particular threat, and maybe it's because I'm a chubby 42-year-old guy, and if you really are looking to score pictures of me topless, I guess go for it. But I would understand if I were in different physical context where that would be a problem. But I also think that the threats are probably more subtle than people hacking into your webcam. The fact that we share a lot of information publicly that we maybe shouldn't. And I'm reminded, Wes, of you going off of Foursquare a couple years ago, but I thought a lot about that, and I almost immediately stopped using Foursquare myself a couple of days later. Part of it was because I didn't know what I was getting out of it, to be honest, but the other piece of it is that, I do perceive that may be sharing at a higher level than I'm necessarily comfortable with. The other one I think about is people, or the somewhat promiscuous crowd that goes and robs houses based on Facebook posts, right? I'm leaving town for 2 weeks, and I'm going on vacation to Europe for 2 weeks, and da 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 da. And we voluntarily give so much information that ignoring what the kind of nefarious means of phones and tablets and laptops are doing, we have to make sure to make that cognizant to our students. And so I think these are important discussions. That article would be an excellent one to share on day one of a classroom environment, to spark interesting and deep discussions. Something I actually kind of miss about, I miss a tons of things about being out of the classroom. One of the prominent things I miss is that, you'd start to get an eye for things that you think would play well in a classroom environment. That article was a fabulous example of something I think would play extremely well in a classroom environment. And so, the opportunities that you can give your students to discuss these issues, have them think about their devices and what context they're using them in, it's an extremely important topic. I would add one other thing to think about, and there's actually an excellent Note to Self podcast about this too. We obligate our students quite a bit in a lot of classroom contexts to sign up for services that are provided to the end user to create or to research or to aggregate information. And I've only in the last 2 or 3 years really started thinking about what is the implication of those things, right? I do a couple of presentations at conferences and trainings for schools about the privacy issue. The most often cited groups that do have or they have a perception of privacy problems is Google and Facebook. To be honest, I'm less concerned about those companies because I feel like they have clear privacy policies, and both of them do bend over backwards to help you set your privacy settings or check what they're collecting on you. But that all said, when you go sign up for Classroom Dojo and you're sharing actually fairly sensitive information about student conduct, right, or about student behavior and performance, what is the implication of that? If you're signing up for a graphics program that you're having students create or paint on there, and students are sharing personal information to get access to that tool, where is that information going? And I heard actually a couple years ago of a school district, and I want to say it's Denver, and I could be wrong about this, but that's come up with a vetted set of tools they're comfortable with from a privacy standpoint, to say that we're going to limit to these tools that have been vetted by a district. But at the risk of sounding paranoid, as a classroom teacher, you are exposing your students to privacy threats if you're having them sign up for X, Y, and Z. And there's lots of ways around that. You create teacher accounts. You can have students lie on those forms, although that creates its own problems because oftentimes it's a violation of terms of service, which having a classroom have students sign up and violate the terms of service, a commercially available product, seems like it also is open to scrutiny and criticism. But those are all things that are kind of swimming around these topics, and unfortunately, we just don't have clear answers to them. So I think if you can talk about this as a teacher with your students, it's important. You would talk about it with your colleagues, and at risk of maybe kicking up some dust that you don't know what to do with, bringing in your administrator and your technology staff in for these conversations, I think is extremely important.
I got to tell a fast story, and then we'll go to your first article. Let's flash back to 1998, 99. I am at Rush Elementary School in Lubbock, Texas. I am a computer technology teacher and facilitator, so half the time I get to work with teachers with integrated lessons, and then half the time I've got kids, in my room teaching them by myself, whatever, basically kind of whatever curriculum we want, because it's pretty open. Keyboarding is like the only requirement to get to. So I end up actually, and I cringe at this, and hopefully I can't be, held liable for something, and nothing terrible happened, but I helped all my kids set up their own Yahoo accounts. And this was in like 98, 99. And if I think now about all the bad things that can happen, I mean, we are setting up, Google accounts for our lower division grades 1 through 4 students, elementary kids this year. It's going to be internal only. And we've got, some gaggle safety monitoring that we're paying for. Boy, so naive, and nothing bad happened. And it was opening up a new world of possibilities. And there were lots of good conversations that we had, but gosh, in those early days of the web, as things mature, and we become more aware of stuff, I don't know. That's one of those things that I cringe to think about. I'm glad. I mean, I can picture, and I know the names of some of those students, and I'm sure that they remember, opening up the world of email. But anyway, that probably wasn't, not probably, that was not a smart thing to do. I would not do the same thing today.
Yep, and in fact, I did something similar too. I had kids setting up Gmail accounts in 2010 and 11 because there was no district email accounts, and I wanted to use the tools. I thought Google Docs was super awesome, and it was the right decision to do. And in retrospect, I would go back and tell Jason to stop being an idiot. And the liability piece is I get a little tired of, because I think that. There's overprotection, and we have to let kids experiment a little bit, but it's an important issue, and the privacy thing is just the start of it. So extremely, extremely important topic.
All right, where do you want to take us next?
Well, an interesting article today in I forgot the name of the site. Recode reports today that there is a study released about screens accessing streaming services. And as it turns out, mobile devices are starting to become the most popular way to access streaming services. And part of the point that the Recode article is making is that personal devices, small personal devices, are starting to become the default way to consume even traditional media like Netflix or Hulu or services that are pay-for services. And I'm sure if they went into more detail, or if they start doing a little micro-analysis, that part of this is also the shift to TV that's outside the more traditional realm. But still, I think it's an interesting piece of this process. And now the other data points they pointed to, 30% of internet data usage at home comes from phones and tablets, which means we are moving away from desktops, laptops, even smart televisions, and instead working more towards personalized devices. And we talk disruption a lot on this particular podcast. It's an important topic for schools, but it really does, in the same way that the cheap laptops 10, 12 years ago were starting to make it into students' backpacks, and then quickly the tablet in 2010, 11, 12 started replacing for that. We need to be thinking about how is it that the tools we use work on phones and tablets. How is it that students can learn on those devices? And I'll be fully frank, my organization doesn't even officially support phones or tablets as a learning device. A lot of our students attempt, and I'll be honest, the reason why is document management. It has little to do with the screen size and more to do with, students are somewhat befuddled by how you would create a Word document on phones and tablets. But it's an extremely important piece of the puzzle here. And I think it calls into the question the future of huge screens. I think it calls into question the future of streaming boxes. Is it important for us to have a big screen in a classroom? Obviously, we're not there yet, but we're close. And as these numbers increase, it's certainly going to challenge the way we consume media.
I've got a fast story to share that's related that happened 2 weeks ago. So Tommy Snyder, shout out to him, is on our tech team. He's the debate coach, actually, for our school, and in his second year of teaching, came from the University of Oklahoma, and he's half-time with our IT staff doing tech support. And he's a Windows Phone guy, which not a lot of those around, and I am probably the last person on, well, maybe not the planet, but certainly in my neighborhood, who's gonna stand up and say, "Wow, Microsoft." I've just had lots of negative experiences. I think whatever you have, use it well, and I'm not telling anybody to throw away a device. But this was amazing. He is able on his Windows Phone to plug it into his monitor and his keyboard and mouse and have a full-blown Windows system, not a mobile operating system, not, something that's underpowered. We're talking full-blown Windows 10 that is totally running off of his phone. And I was just like, oh my gosh. Now, a little bit later, I think this was this week, there was something happened with his phone and he didn't get text messages, and it was some kind of wonky thing, and I teased him about he needs to get an iPhone. But that seriously was the most impressive mobile phone, sort of thinking about it being a replacement that I've seen. Because if that's a glimpse of the future, and we've talked about Microsoft, pressing the boundaries of innovation, really trying to reinvent themselves, etc. If that's a glimpse of the future, I mean, I loaned my Chromebook, our personal Chromebook, to a friend, so I don't have a second screen here. So I've got our links, and I'm consuming it here. This is probably the main device at home, even though I've got an iPad that I'm using. So, if this device can go to work with me, and I plug it into a screen and a keyboard and a mouse, we're glimpsing the future there. And it challenges me as an IT director thinking about devices that we're going to be purchasing and replacing. It's been an assumption that you had a MacBook Pro, and now it's 5 years later, and you need another MacBook Pro. I don't know. Is it gonna be the tablet? I'm not saying it's gonna be the phone, but as the computational power of these devices increases, it pushes the boundary of saying, what do you need in order to do your work? And certainly when it comes to consuming, everything I need to consume is here. Everything I need to produce and share and create, not here yet. Lots of it is, but not everything.
Yep. And by the way, there are Android versions of the Windows Phone thing. There's something called the Superbook, which is a $99. It's kind of like a laptop shelf for Android phones. There's a couple Kickstarter projects right now are aiming to do the same thing. It's a lot. It's really interesting what direction that's going into, and in fact, that would be the answer to my criticism of using phones in context sometimes of more productive apps, is that if you can get to a larger screen or can figure out the document management, that's probably going to be a better option than, kind of trying to kick it entirely on your phone. And the thing I keep going back to is that even if it's a really low function, prepaid Android phone, these are still sitting in our 7th and 8th graders' backpacks on the way to and from school. And harnessing that is important and really powerful, even if you're just a voice on a recording, even if you're a simple activity or even reference to an app, there's a way to engage that. And there's lots of great examples of that in schools. I still don't think I've seen yet a wide implementation of that in a way that, another school could say, that's how to do it, and that's how to get the change you're looking for. Not that there's schools that aren't doing pretty amazing things, with smaller mobile devices, but it's coming, and it's definitely going to impact the way we engage with information.
Definitely. And I would actually, and as a last note on that one, I'd say Seesaw is the most transformative app for sharing media content that I've seen on a mobile device that I used in the iPad media camps this summer. My wife's used for 2 years. We had teachers use last year. And that ability to readily not only access content that the teacher's sharing, but be able to create your own content, share it, comment on it, have a very vibrant, interactive community. That just really pushes the boundary. So I'm going to jump down to an article about open content. This was from Popular Mechanics on August 21st. NASA just made all its research free online. And that doesn't include certain things with patents and there are some, there's probably classified stuff that they didn't release either. But yay, kudos to NASA, kudos to our government in promoting open content. I was thinking about this for some reason tonight about disappointments that I've had in the Obama administration from an educational policy standpoint, but there have been some things they've done well. I think celebrating White House fellows and celebrating innovators has been a good thing. I think the focus that they've had on open content is really good. There's a lot of educators out there today, probably a lot of tech directors, and certainly, superintendents and heads of school and just and board members that do not understand how hugely important open content is, how we should be leveraging it in multiple grade levels. And there's a lot of important work that we can do, I think, in sharing open content with other teachers and also contributing to it. And talking